What's going on, guys? It is Madman Plant. We are back here at the Salem Convention Center for the Heritage Tattoo and Art Convention. And like I said, I'm racking in more and more people to talk to. And we got Denise from Tattooedinky with us. And we're going to have a conversation about mental health, addiction, loss of friends through addiction, and much, much more. So welcome to the Smoke Busters podcast.
Thank you.
Our podcast is all about the mental health, home growing, and then smoking. When we're here at the tattoo conventions, it's about mental health, tattooing, and then ultimately smoking. And we're here to break the stigma, really open the door and allow people to really be understood, heard, and valued for what's really going on. So I want to talk, first of all, you own a tattoo shop, or you are part of a tattoo shop?
Previously. Yes, with my ex-husband. I owned it with him about 8 years.
There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, for about 8 years, we owned the shop together, built it from the ground up. And when I divorced, I just kind of wanted out of everything. And so I signed that off to him. So now I retail selling clothing.
Fantastic. So you're out here attached to what vendor are you with today?
Selling clothing. I've also got some unique vintage pinup dresses, that kind of thing.
Oh, and this is all your brand and everything.
Yeah, Dark Horse.
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. And tell us the concept behind Dark Horse and your apparel.
So being from Kentucky, obviously horses are like a big thing for us. But I honestly, I fell in love with the tattoo community. So when I met my ex-husband, he was a tattooer. I had 3 tattoos at the time. But he kind of brought me in and we started doing conventions together. And what I love so much about tattoo conventions is nobody cares where you're from, what you look like, none of that. They just accept you where you are. And so it's always felt like a big family to me. And after we divorced, I didn't want to give that family up that I had found. And so I started just selling and unique vintage and shirts that my friend and I made together, all in the tattoo convention circuit.
You know, that's cool. The love for the nostalgia, being around the community, the conventions and stuff. And then, really adapting. Life is about adaptation, and what works doesn't always work forever, and being able to recalibrate, refocus, and then get right back into it.
Absolutely.
So do you do cannabis? Are you in cannabis?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure, because when we go to our next topic, I think mental health is the big thing.
Yes.
And with cannabis and tattooing, you see a lot of release, whether people are coming to commemorate a person or memorialize. I have Honey's prints on the back of my leg, on the side that she walks on. Tell me a little bit about your tattoo journey. When you first met your husband, you only had about 3 tattoos. You are now covered in beautiful art, and it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Where does the inspiration come from, and how has that transformed kind of you as a person through art?
Yeah. So I love art in general to begin with. And I've always kind of felt like this is my expression of who I am. And not all of it. So I've got some really silly tattoos that just happened at conventions where we were like, let's throw this on you, But then I've got some really meaningful ones. My chest tattoo is probably one of my most meaningful ones. And it's kind of, people say like Red Riding Hood, but I like the wolf that you feed is the one that wins, right? So I've got this lady facing off against the wolf.
Okay.
And so for me, it's like me facing off against, talking about mental health, all of my demons kind of thing. And it's like, I'm going to overcome all of the demons I've had in my life. And we all have them from whatever background that we've got. Some are worse than others, maybe, comparatively, but we've all got them. And so I'm going to overcome. So things like that, I've tried to put onto my body where I can have conversations, because people always say, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does this one mean? So things like that, really meaningful things like that to me.
Now, are there any tattoos that are maybe if you had to rank 1 to 10, which one out of those is number 1?
My chest one is pretty far up there. I know this is really silly. I've got Be Still on my hand, on my finger here, and I've had it since.
Did you move a lot when you get tattoos done?
I don't. I'm actually pretty decent with it, but I got this right after I had my daughter. She's 11 years old now. But I had a lot of chaos in my life growing up. And then in my marriage, there was a lot of chaos too. And I tend to give into that and like let that overtake me at times. And this was my reminder to just be still in it all. Remember who you are, get grounded, find your peace, that kind of thing. So anytime there's a lot of stressors in life, I look to that and I'm like, okay, recollect yourself, be still,
Yeah.
go out in nature, whatever it is that I need to do to bring myself back to who I am and what I know to be true.
Now, you talked about your marriage and the addiction and stuff like that. Now, have you personally suffered with addiction yourself?
So this is a tough question for me. And I think it's tough partly because of my marriage. So my ex-husband was an alcoholic, or is, and my dad was growing up as well. And I always struggled with food. Like that was always my thing. I actually had a weight loss surgery. I lost 130 pounds.
Wow.
But my natural reaction when I get stressed out is like, I just want to eat. And so I think of addiction like, yeah, I had a food addiction. And, but when you say that, sometimes people who have been through some really significant drug use, they're like, that's nothing, you know? And,
I agree and disagree with that only because the tolls on your body that obesity and unhealthy habits of eating
absolutely
can honestly, in some cases, be as bad as the drugs that you're putting in.
Absolutely.
You know, especially when somebody can go septic and, you know, not even have to have drugs in their system to turn like that. So I beg to differ on that. You know, I like to say that, hey, you know, we shouldn't be judging other people's scenarios and situations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know, like we spoke briefly before, my mom passed away in April.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. She had cirrhosis, and that woman, I watched her drink maybe 2 alcoholic drinks in my entire life. But she had it from fatty liver disease, and it was the foods that she was eating and being overweight and things like that. So when you say that, like, yeah, absolutely. And the way that she died was very painful and horrific for me to watch. So yeah, you know, food is a true addiction to me. That's why I say yes and no, because I know some people don't equate it to like the chemical addiction
you don't have to put a needle in your arm to be addicted.
Absolutely.
You could go home and do unhealthy habits, like, you know, and I'll throw myself under the bus. I got an addiction right here.
Yeah.
That I spend
for sure
sometimes up to 12 hours a day on my phone, on and off of it. And you think about, well, you're not even okay. Well, how does that affect you physically? Well, it's taking minutes away from your life.
Sure.
Just like those opportunities of making poor decisions. So, you know, my thing is, with addiction, you can't just say it's just heroin, it's just cocaine, it's just these things. I think addiction could be like an obsessive thing too.
Absolutely.
It's trying to take in too much of wrong materials or, you know, whatever. So let's talk about your mom a little bit and the cirrhosis. So what was that like? You said it's very painful.
Yeah. And I told her even that she didn't know how sick she was. So I took care of her for the past few years now, but she was actually on a liver transplant list because to get on that, like, you can't be drinking alcohol. That wasn't a big deal for her. You know, she was following all the things that the doctor said, low sodium diet, all of that. And I was taking her to the doctor one day. And actually it was 3 days after I got a call from the liver transplant team that said that she was a second in line for a liver and someone else got it ahead of her, the first person in line. And it is what it is, you know. They had a more severe need. And so it was a few days after that, and I was taking her to we had to go weekly for blood draws and stuff like that. We're headed there, and they called me from the liver transplant team and said, you need to get your mom to the ER. Her blood levels are out of whack and we need to get her checked. So I was like, it's nothing, Mom. Like, they probably just need to maybe give you a unit of blood or something. And I take her to the ER and they gave her a unit of blood. Her levels were down. Her platelets were really, really low. She had no energy. And this was very normal. So again, like, she did not realize how sick she was.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Then they ended up admitting her and they just kind of wanted to watch her overnight. And the next day, I went to visit her and I left to go get my kids from school. And they called me and said she was vomiting blood. And so, what happens with cirrhosis is in your esophagus, the blood vessels start bleeding out. And so, they had to go in and do an emergency surgery to band those. But at that point, she had so much internal bleeding. She had so much internal bleeding. They tried to, she became septic, and then they tried to take fluid off of her, and she just wasn't responding. And at the end of it, she was in the hospital 9 days, fully out of it, had a ventilator, had dialysis, all of it. And I had to make the decision to go ahead and pull her off of all of the machines. But I knew, like, the person laying there, number one, like, if we can get through this, you're still not healthy. You still need a liver. Like, with cirrhosis, there is no other end but death or a liver transplant. Like, that's it. And so if we can get you through this medical episode, then what? How much longer until something like this happens again? And her body just could not take anymore. And the doctors actually told me her body will declare itself. And when it stopped responding, I was like, we can't. Like, this is torture to somebody to do this. So
it's very powerful and moving, especially having to make the decision, especially to somebody that gave you life, and you're deciding it's time to end theirs.
Yeah.
What is that like?
I'm trying not to cry, but it was very mixed emotions for me, because I told the doctors, like, this is the humane thing to do. But the emotional thing I wanted to do was keep my mama,
Yeah.
She kept my kids. My daughter's 11. My son is 9. She kept them from the moment they were born, and I went back to work anytime I needed her to. So she had just as much a part of raising them as I have. And so to lose somebody like that in my life was really hard, but also I can't be selfish. And I know that was not a way for her to live. And she couldn't. She realistically could not live like that. You just can't. Your blood pressure dropped. Like, there was not enough that they could do. If we did keep her sustained on life support, there wasn't enough they could do to fix her,
One of the things I was able to do before my grandmother died, she died in 2015 before my son was born, only 2 months. And I really wanted her to meet him. She died of Merkel cell cancer. And it was one of those things where she lived her whole life and it just developed. She was 87 years old, and in 3 years she was gone.
Yeah.
And one of those things is before she died, I was able to have a conversation with her where I talked to her about her death, and I asked her everything I could think of and things. And it proved to be a really good closing for me during the funeral, where I didn't feel the emotions because I already knew what she thought.
Yeah.
And did you ever have any closing with your mom?
I did, yeah. And because she was so sick and on the liver transplant list, like, we had talked through what do you want to happen and things like that. But even still, I think just mentally, your brain doesn't want to accept that. So in my mind, it was like, she's going to get a new liver and things are going to be okay. And she's going to live another 20. She was 68 when she died. Like, she's going to live another 20 years. I know. Her parents are still alive. My grandparents my papa will be 90 in December.
That's the heartbreaking thing, is to outlive your own children.
Yes. And that was really, really hard to watch them bury their daughter, and obviously it's my mom, but it was probably more painful for me to watch them and my children witness this than for me. Like, I knew my mom was at peace with everything, and
same with my grandmother. The exact same thing. Yeah. And that's why with this whole podcast and everything, to me, it's about changing the way I feel when I die, because as a younger person, I almost committed suicide. And then I also almost died in a car accident with my wife and my son, 2020. And when you're in a situation where you think you're going to die, or you're close, you're thinking of accepting it, there's a very cool, calm emotion to tie with death. Yeah. And there's also feeling. And my feeling was very angry and very frustrated. And my goal as a human, as a person, is to be like my grandparent, and like your mom, where yeah, maybe it sucks. I could have probably lived a little bit longer, but it's okay because I'm also at peace. And I
Yes.
think the best thing you can do is try to find some peace and acceptance. Nobody wants to accept the fact that they're going to die. But I think at a certain point, even you, it sounds like you said, you know what, we got to face reality.
Yeah.
And the road is going to be so unbearable, and you're to a point where you're not resilient anymore. And that's one of the biggest things that and frustrate me about life is hindsight is 2020.
Mhm.
We don't get these visions and understandings until things are gone and taken from us.
Yeah.
And it's just a very eye-opening experience because you're going to the hospital, you're just like, oh mom, it's okay, they're just going to check you out, there's probably just nothing. And then I think it said 7 days.
She was 9 days
9
total.
days.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then totally gone.
Yeah.
So it's just so powerful that I think as individuals, that we live life with expression and value. And that's another thing that we had talked about too, is removing certain people and situations from our lives.
Yes.
Because toxicity isn't just like bad diets or, like spilling something like chemical on you.
Mhm.
Toxicity is the people, the conversations, the lifestyles, the energies that we subject ourselves to.
100%. Yes.
So where does your mindset come from? Because you obviously have to have a very resilient mindset to be here, to be going through all the things you've done. Where do you think that builds?
I don't know, honestly. I think it's just like from a young age, and I know I mentioned this to you beforehand, but my parents had a very, tumultuous relationship. And so it's kind of always on my own anyway. My sister had mental health needs and mental handicaps as well. And so it's kind of always me. And so it's just like, I've got to do this, and so there's been a bit of that of like, I have to, you just have to keep going. But also like now I've got kids. And so there's a bit of that that's like, they need me. And I mean, I need me too, I need me too. And every day is not great, but I get through every day. Like we're getting through the days, and some days are harder than others or whatever. But I think it's just accepting that's part of life. This is it. Like, and I've had people say to me like, it's always the good people that are gone, or it's always good people that get shit on or whatever. And I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to.
No, you do anything you want.
But good people get shit on, and it's like, well, good and bad happen to good and bad people, but it's like what you do with it, right? It's how you're going to react to it. And I could either let that take me down completely or let it make me stronger, build me, up stronger. And that's what I always hope that I do for my kids, is that I just come back stronger. You might take a hit, but it's a lesson. It's a life lesson, and you come back stronger. So
final topic.
Yes.
Cannabis.
Yes.
How has cannabis helped you through all of this? Because I use cannabis as a backbone, especially for anxiety, depression, not feeling good, appetite. As a cannabis user, what would you say?
Yeah. So I and again, you and I briefly went over this, but I was in a motorcycle wreck in 2020. Actually, you were talking about your wreck in 2020. That nearly killed me. And so I've had 4 surgeries from that. I've got a couple more to go. Yeah.
What happened?
Got hit by a drunk driver, hit and run. And so actually just
in
last
motion
year,
or at a light?
In motion. We were about 60 miles an hour. I was a passenger, and everything went black for me. I had a mild TBI with that. And they actually just in December finally convicted the guy of it. So it's been a long road with that. But with all of the surgeries that I've had and still have coming up, cannabis has helped me, like joint pain. And so I can't sleep. Like I genuinely cannot sleep with pain without it. And so there's been that piece. There's also some PTSD, not just from the motorcycle wreck. I've had SA in my life, and I've had course, my childhood experience, and we've all got traumas again in different ways, I guess. But it has helped me with PTSD, anxiety, like you said, some depression, just for my mind to kind of calm down and to kind of relax, because a lot of, other than the pain, my inability to sleep is my mind racing if I don't have cannabis.
Yep.
And so it's been a game changer for that with me. And it's interesting because, like, I used to never agree with it. I was very like, no, you don't. Because again, my dad was an alcoholic, and I'm like, you don't do any kind of substance, you know? And so I was very closed-minded to it until after my wreck, actually. And they had me on 11 different, you know, pain pills and stuff. And I don't take medication. And like, even with my surgeries, I'm like, I'm not taking this medication.
I smoke weed.
Yeah, I'm absolutely not doing it.
Antibiotics, and I know that I'll get like an infection.
Sure.
Don't.
Yeah.
Then.
But pain medicine stuff, I'm just not going to do it. And so, you know, marijuana is natural. Like, yeah, I will do that. But absolutely not on medication. So that's kind of been my journey with it. And it's just, yeah, it's great for my mental health, for my physical health. It's been a game changer.
Well, that's really awesome. What I want to do is get you on my 2-hour session. So this is a little bit of
I talk
smaller...
a lot. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, we can keep talking if you want. There's a couple of things. You good to talk a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the abuse. You mentioned sexual assault and physical assault.
Mm-hmm.
We specialize in talking with a lot of people about rape. We've talked about incest. Now, was this all childhood, or is this adulthood as well, or through your marriage, or?
Yeah, well, a little bit of that too. And that, this is like, we might have to put this on the 2-hour thing if you want to.
That's fine. I got nothing to do but walk around and find more people that don't want to be on the podcast. I'm just kidding. Yeah. They do want to be on the podcast.
So I was a virgin when I met my ex-husband. I was 25. So that's like a really big deal, you know. But growing up, like, I saw my mom, anything that my dad wanted or said, like, she agreed with it because it was easier than fighting the fight with him, right? And so that's how I grew up. That's what I saw. And so my ex-husband would say to me, like, you owe me that. Like, we're married and I can't have sex outside of this. So this is like part of your job, you know? There was one night he woke up and he jumped out of bed. He was talking in his sleep, but it was, you know, and he jumped out of bed and yelled, "It's raping time." And I was like, "What are you doing? Like, go to bed." And he tried to and I'm like, "Get off of me," you know, but it was just the expectation of, this is what you have to, like, literally, it will be easier for you to do this than to fight me about it. That's what he would say. And so I'd just give in, even if I didn't want to. Right. But then after my divorce is when the sexual assault happened. Actually at a tattoo convention, like after a tattoo convention and after party. And I'm still not fully okay talking about it. Like, it's still a really difficult topic.
We'll just talk about what you want to.
Yeah. No problem. But, because I think there's a lot of shame with that. Like, I'm old enough that, you know, that shouldn't have happened. That's in my brain.
Well, yes, that's in your brain, but that's not a reality.
Right.
What happened to you should never happen to you. And it doesn't matter what age you are. It's inappropriate and it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When our interview with Cherry Stoner, who is actually going to be at my event, she's probably one of the people that has really made my goal of talking about this so important, because she shines bravery just like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things was, same thing with you. It happened with her. She had gotten divorced. She was in a meaningless marriage.
Mm-hmm.
She met a guy on FetLife right after her marriage. The guy said he wanted to come over and, you know, just meet her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he came over and raped her.
Yeah.
And she freezes when bad things happen.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how she wanted to do all these things, but she was like almost like in a transcendent like state where she was in like kind of like conscious with what was going on. She could feel it and everything.
Yes.
And right after it was done, she told the guy, she's like, "You know, you just raped me." And he said, "Well, I thought that's what you wanted," and then left.
Like anyone
you
would wanna-
know. Well, exactly, but don't feel like that, because it's just like if somebody put a gun to me and said, "Give me your wallet."
Mhm.
I don't know what to do in that situation. I know what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna give in
Sure.
and try to make it stop or go away.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you don't know what could happen if you fought back. And as much as you would never want that to happen to you, sometimes, and I can't speak for this because I've never been in a rape situation, but I could imagine, like you said, it's easier just to go along with it, to get it over with,
Yeah.
than to be strangled to death or murdered or whatever. Now, where did you when this happened, this was an after party, so somebody like you guys left together, or
A group, yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's also what happened to Cherry Stoner. She was she's been raped 3 different times throughout her life, and what's same with her. And let me ask you if this is the same situation. She was at a hotel party. It was actually a friend in the group
Yeah.
who did it.
Yeah.
The next day she confined to her friends, and they said that you'll never have to be in the same room with him again, and that was it.
I didn't have that exact thing happen. I was on my own at a convention, and which I have done a lot. I worked on my own a lot, and even I can still carry, but I didn't have it, and
Yeah.
similar to her situation of, I went back to that in my mind of my ex-husband saying it'll be easier, but I had said no. I had said I don't want this. But still it happened anyway. And then I felt like, did I allow that? And I confided in a couple of friends who sadly said, "You mean you didn't fight? You didn't this, you didn't that?" And I'm like, you don't know. In my brain before that,
I'd say they're not really friends, because they should have
Right.
been outraged that your friend just got hurt or violated.
Absolutely. But in your brain, I don't care what you think. Ahead of time, you think, you know what? I'll kill somebody. I'll fight I'll do this, that, or that. You don't know. You don't know until you're in it. And it is just terrifying. Like it's, you don't know what to do. Well, I didn't. I'm very much the freeze type of person, same as Cherry. But so I just didn't. So I just locked up, and it's, again, it feels very shameful, and I know that it shouldn't be. I'm in therapy, and my therapist and I have talked about that a lot. And I'm accepting that even if I didn't, fight and bite and kick and claw or whatever, I still didn't deserve what happened.
Absolutely.
I know that.
No, not at all. Nobody should be violated or forced to do anything wrong. We live in a country that protects those rights through a constitution and through a standard of living, Now, let me ask you, when this was all said and done, what was the after situation? Did the person just leave like Cherry's assaulter, or were you forced to see him again?
Yeah, that weekend it was an Airbnb that we were at, so we were all staying together. So I tried to keep myself just shut off as much as I could just to get through the weekend. Like I said, I was all alone, and I was like, do I leave? Do I, lose money, close up shop at this convention, lose money, and my reputation for leaving the convention and stuff like that. So I stayed through the convention.
Fuck a reputation.
I know. And then I didn't report it then. I didn't go get an essay kit, none of that. So about a week after that, I was back home, and that's when I first confided in somebody. The first person I did was my therapist, and she was like, "Oh, no, none of this you deserved,
Yeah.
And she encouraged me to go ahead and get an essay kit, and then to talk to the authorities anyway, even if I didn't file a report, just to kind of talk to them. But at that point, when you don't do something in the moment, there's not so much that they can do about it, sadly. And like I've researched so much, like the number of.
Well, if that's the case, then I don't know what they're doing to P. Diddy if they can't bring it up all these years later, when he has 120 sexual assault cases against him.
Very true.
Seems that they were able to bring it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, so that's very true. I made a report, but again, without any hard evidence. It's like, what do? It's on file anyway, so if anything ever happens again,
well, and you also, for survival purposes, and for no other reasons, just for survival.
Sure.
You went with it. So the ability to have bruising and other
Absolutely.
things.
I did actually have a couple of bruises regardless.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have pictures of that that I took the next day, but that was all my evidence, from it.
Now, moving forward, after you were in a settled environment, when you were first by yourself for the first time, what did you feel? Like, you talked about how you feel like you should have done something.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, when I was in my car accident, you always think, oh, well, I'll just swerve out of the way. Like you said, I'll just XYZ. There was no time.
Yeah.
Everything just happened. It went black for a second.
Yeah.
And then I was in the ditch. With that being said, the first time I was alone after that, it kind of like got to me. I was like, that was fucking close.
Yeah.
Like, that was really fucking close.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts?
I think I'm very hard on myself anyway. And so I think my initial thoughts were just, what did you do? Like that to me, it was very much, what did you do? Why did you not? Like I questioned my own self with it. And what do you do now? And what part of this is your fault, I guess, even though logical brain knows that none of that is my fault. Emotional brain very much wants to tell me, what should you have done? And now how do you move forward from this? And how do you just get through this weekend? And then how do I protect my daughter? I've got a daughter. How do I teach her not to do what I did? Like what, so all of those things were going through my head. Like, what do I do now? And how I've let somebody do this to me. What, at some point I've got to stand up for myself. I have to, do something. And that was the point of me filing the report, is really like, I don't care if you don't do anything. This was me standing up for me and saying this was not okay. And I'm going to put it on paper that this was not okay. That was more for me than for expecting any kind of charges to be filed. But it did change my mentality with that very much of, I've got to stand up for me because no one else is going to. And like I said, if this happened, I something's got to change. Like the people pleasing, freezing response in me, I've got to work on that. So that's what I've started doing with my therapy.
Well, I think that is good, that your self-awareness is incredible. And I think the idea too is to find this as a way to empower others.
Yeah.
One thing that I think that you could do off the top of my head is create an awareness kit for females who are coming to conventions.
Yeah.
And like safety. A lot of perpetrators when it comes to serial killers, rapists, child predators, it's usually by somebody
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing, is you are surrounded by personalities, people all day. You don't know intentions. You don't know what people are truly about until you're in a situation with them. And when you're caught off guard and there's nobody to save you, even if you did yell for help,
right?
You got to make a decision. And I guarantee you, a great analogy would be if somebody put a gun in front of your face and told you to give them their wallet, I bet most of you guys would be handing over wallets.
Sure, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it is the exact same concept where you don't know what's going to happen. So do I risk fighting? And I don't know what this person's about. I don't know if he's killed other people. I don't know how many times he's done this to other people. So I don't think you should blame yourself. I think you should thank yourself that you have the courage to get back out into life and to live your life, to continue to travel, to continue to go. That would be enough for somebody to never want to go to a convention again.
Well, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore, but it is something that I've loved for so long. For 10 years, I've loved doing this. And like I said, I love the community. And although he's in the community, that's not what the community is. And I think that's the thing that like I had to tell myself, like, one person isn't what the whole community is, and one person isn't what's always going to happen at these. And it's never happened before.
Yep.
And hasn't happened since then. So I think it's just like that fear, like just doing it even while you're scared, putting yourself back out there, but maybe in a more safe way. Like now I'm much more aware of things.
Yeah,
Like I
sexual
said,
awareness, who you are,
yes,
your
yes,
privacy.
absolutely. And I got more private with things. I've got my daughter here. I don't travel alone anymore. Now, although it is just me and her here, I've actually used it to teach her this weekend. So like we go out and it's dark at night and I'm like, you need to be aware of your surroundings, you know. So I'm trying to use it to kind of teach her what we have to do. And I'm going to say as women, and I know it's not just women, but I know it is more prevalent for women to have to be more aware of what's going on around them, I think.
Oh, easily, especially with the mindset of people who, when they think that women wear like tight clothing or short dresses, that they want that type of
Asking
attention.
for it.
Exactly.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that, they wanted it. And it's like, but they didn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a objectified like concept.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So if looking back on a lot of this now, what would you tell to a person that may be in a situation like yours, that just experienced something like this? What would be your advice to them right now? What should they do? In your own opinion, this is your opinion.
And I hesitate to say it this way, but like when I say forgive yourself, there's no forgiveness that's needed for you, but like don't hold yourself accountable.
Yep.
This is not you. Like that's the big, and I have to tell myself that over and over. That's the biggest thing for sure. This should have never happened. It doesn't, I don't care if you're standing there naked. You're not asking for anything like that.
Unless you're grabbing them by the hand, directing them to the bedroom.
Correct. Yes. Unless you've like openly, expressed that this is what you want. That is not what should be happening. So grace, maybe that's the right word. Give yourself grace with that because I wear pinup stuff all the time. And for a little bit after that, I wouldn't because I had that same, like, I shouldn't be wearing this or whatever. Don't change who you are because something like this happened. If that is something that you enjoy. And like, for me, like pinup stuff, I feel good in it and it makes me feel confident. And for me to give that up because somebody didn't know how to manage their own behavior, I'm not doing that. And so that's what I would say is like, don't give up who you are for someone else's bad behavior. That's not on you.
No, and then same thing. You should not change or conform to other people because they think that.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why even my wife, she pisses me off sometimes because she goes to the gym at night and then she'll walk the dog and she's like, I'm a grown woman. She's like, I just fight them. And I'm like, you don't know that.
You don't know.
If it was a group of guys in a van, you're not going to do much.
Yeah.
All right. You know what I mean? And like sometimes like we'll be on travel and I'm at night, and I'm not afraid to admit it either. Even as a guy, I'm a very small person and I get timid in different environments that I don't know, and I like to be point A to point B. Like I'm not here to fuck around. I'm not here to get to know anybody. I want to get in and out. And sometimes Lacey's like, let's just take our time and walk. And I'm like, we don't know where the fuck we are. What are you doing? Talking about, you need to follow me. We need to go. And she's like, why are you getting so hype? And I'm like, because we don't know. It's like they could try to steal honey. They could rob us, anything, and I think so too is yes, it is more prevalent for women on the sexual assault side. I feel like mainly just because it seems to be this ingrained thing where some people think of it as of objects and possessions and things like this and false interpretations of clothing assessments and stuff like that. But I also think so too that even as a guy, regardless of the situation, you can still be a victim. You don't have to be a pretty woman like yourself to be a victim. You could be anybody and still get hurt. Yeah, absolutely. And sexual assault goes both ways, Absolutely,
yeah, for sure. And I was going to say, it doesn't matter either, because I've talked about women, but even if a man's standing there, half naked or completely, if nobody's asking for it, like to me, it's just like common respect for another human in general, period.
Yeah.
To not enter into their space in any way that they've not asked for.
Well,
end.
Well, yeah. And you also think so too, that when you enter into that sexual realm with a person, the emotions and the feelings and everything should be already mutual, where it's not an awkward situation. It's not, there's no like derogatory meaning behind it. It's two people expressing emotion and like the art of, intimacy and sexuality.
Absolutely.
So I definitely feel that. Let's see here. Well, I also want to talk about overdose. So you had a friend that overdosed, and we talk a lot about addiction. Let's talk about that real quick, and then we'll cap it up.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a friend. We've been friends for 20 plus years, and she was up and down with substance use. So cocaine, and then alcohol, and then for a little bit she got clean. She had a son. And then heroin is what she got on. And she would message me and she would say, we don't have anywhere to stay. Can you get us a hotel room? We don't have food, things like that. And I did help here and there with some money. And I knew she was pregnant. I knew something was going on. Yeah. I thought it was the boyfriend. And so I was like, I need you to take care of yourself. So here, like I would rent a hotel room. I wouldn't give money, but like I'd rent a hotel room. I'd buy groceries, that kind of thing, which, in a roundabout way also helped feed into that, I guess, because then she had other money to
enabling it.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And although I knew that, I wanted so badly to help her and to be there for her. And I think I thought I could fix things if I could help this part of it, and I don't know if you know about like Maslow's hierarchy, but like their basic needs met is what leads them to be able to do greater things, right? So security, food, water, shelter, all of that. If that's met, then they can move on to work on like mental health type thing, love, and, then their own mental health. And so that was my thought. Like, if I can help provide for these basic things that she needs, then maybe she will want to do the work.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to fix it. I come from that, again, watching my dad be an alcoholic and being married to one as well. Just that desire to want to fix things for people. So I did that for a little bit, and then I cut that off. And she reached out to me. So we had our rec in 2020, and early 2021, she reached out to me asking for help again. I was like, I just can't anymore. And so midway through 2021, she called me and she said, I'm ready to turn my life around. I'm, pregnant, and I want to do right by this child and all of this stuff. And I was out of town on a girls' trip with my daughter. And I said, I love that. I will call you when I get back to town. And she said, I hope I'm still here. And I was like, don't talk like that, And she overdosed 2 days later before I made it back to town. And so it killed her and her unborn baby. And I carried a lot of guilt with that for a while of I shouldn't have been enabled. And then I should have called her and talked to her while I was on my girls' trip and all of that kind of thing. And then in the end, it was like, she made these decisions and she had done it multiple times. And while I love her dearly still to this day, and love the person that she was, those were choices that she was making regardless of what I did. So even if I had not played a part in that in any of those ways, that was a decision that she was making along the way. But I never could reach her in the ways that I wanted to. I always offered to be there for her. Actually, I sent her to rehab one time. I called her parents when she was struggling with alcohol use, and they came and got her and put her into a program for 45 days. So I've even been a part of like actively trying to get some help for her. But that's just, she did not want that. And that's, I think, the biggest lesson I've learned from it all is it doesn't matter how much I want somebody to make a change or what I want different for their life. If they don't want it, it's not going to happen.
Well, we talk a lot about that. And one of my guests, Melissa, who's multiple heroin addict, multiple times, did meth, OD'd, and one of the things she said in our interview was, You can't get clean for your parole officer. You can't get clean for your
No.
friend. Can't do it for your kids. You got to do it for yourself.
Mhm.
I think the problem is when in the addict's mind is enough enough. And this reminds me of not my friend, but my wife's friend, Taylor. She overdosed at a party. Her friends wrapped her up in a rug and threw her out of a moving vehicle
Oh my
in
gosh.
32-degree weather, where she was found by the police half dead. She was in the hospital. We went to go visit her, and she was talking like she had Down syndrome, like severely messed up.
Mm.
3 months later, died of a heroin overdose. And it's sad because usually they are beautiful people, resilient people. People have just incredible characteristics and personalities, things that could never be matched, and they go out so quickly. And same thing, what's crazy is, so right before she died, she had overdosed again. Her brother freaked out, wound up doing a bunch of heroin himself.
Oh my gosh.
He died that night,
Oh my gosh.
and then she died like 2 weeks later or whatever.
Oh.
And you just wonder what, I guess I can't really speak for it because, like I said, I've never been an addict or anything like that. But what would have been so wrong or so detrimental? And this is where mental health is the big thing. And the question that I'm not a professional, I'm not a medical expert. I'm just a guy that has mental health conversations. So I always like to put that out because I never try to be somebody I'm not.
Sure.
I'm not, you know what I mean? But what could go wrong in somebody's life so much that they would knowingly or unknowingly do something that would take them out? I always think of it, and I talked about this on my last podcast. I wonder, and I'm sure that there is, in suicide and in overdose, where it happens and the person has like an oh fuck moment, and they didn't really mean for whatever to happen.
Yeah.
They were just going through the emotions or a rough time or whatever,
Mhm.
and then it takes their life.
Mhm.
And I just feel for people, because I'm sure there's a lot of great people who have died through addiction that probably did not want to die that way.
Well, and I always say, like, nobody becomes an addict on purpose. Like, nobody's like, you know what, I'm gonna fuck my whole life off. Like fuck it all up, But I'm not a professional either. I'm working on it, but I'm not yet.
You're an experienced professional. How about that?
Yeah, it's just life experience. But I mean, any substance alters our brain, like chemically alters it. And so I have to tell myself that's not the true person that we know. Like you and I sitting here right now, if we drank a fifth of tequila we would not be the same people that we are talking at this minute. I'd be
extremely happy, laughing, and I would probably have cried with you.
Yes, yeah, I'd definitely be crying by now for sure. But they're just not the same people that we have known them to be. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles is like, but this isn't who you are, Katie. Like my friend was Katie. This isn't who you are, Katie. And there's so much more for you, Katie. And there's so many things that we see that they can't because their brain is chemically altered, for one. But also, I do think, mental health wise, and obviously there's a ton of personality disorders and mental health disorders and all of that. But I do think there are people that maybe don't handle stress, don't cope well, or healthy. I shouldn't say well, but in a healthy way, like other people maybe do. And so like for Katie, for instance, that was her coping mechanism. And that is what typically happens with addiction is I can't cope. And it might be a big thing at first. It might be, sexual assault or something. And that's how you're coping with getting over it. And then it becomes every little thing, oh, somebody cut me off in traffic. I want to get high or I want to get drunk or whatever it might be, because you train your body to not be able to accept any small stressor, I feel like. And I think that's the same with like chronic pain. And although I'm not a professional with this, I've talked to multiple professionals about it, that chronic pain is a mental, I don't want to say disorder, but it is mental in that you take pain medicine, for instance, for a long time, and your body then cannot handle the smallest. Like you get a prick from a thumbtack. You're like, oh my gosh, that's so much pain because you have deadened your nerves or your you know what I mean, for so long with pain medicine that any small thing seems really overwhelming. And so I think the same thing with like addiction. Any small thing then seems like I can't tolerate this. I can't handle this. I need to escape. I need whatever my drug of choice might be. So that's how I see it. And I'm sure that there are those oh shit moments. I didn't mean for it to go this far without the ability to reel it in, if that makes sense, because it is that I don't know another way to cope. And I am so fixed on this that this is my only way to do it.
You know, we are about to have a suicide cleanup company come on the podcast. They're actually really excited about it. And the reason why I feel like there possibly is that oh shit moment is sometimes during suicides, you'll see blood everywhere and going into different rooms and everything. And I feel like that's the person freaking out as something, they're bleeding out and everything. One of the, I'm going to read this lyric real quick. I was actually talking about this the other day, but one thing with addiction and everything, all right. So, Nickelback, right?
Yeah.
So, they have a song and it's about what we're talking about. And the song is called Because of You. And I think this relates to a lot of people that are in situations like that. It says, hands on the mirror, can't get much clearer, can't make this all go away. Now that you're bleeding, you stare at the ceiling, watch as it all fades away. From what you do, because of you, I can't be there. Each time that you call, I swore not to come, but I'm here after all. I know by the look in your eye, I won't stand around to watch you die. And then it goes, now that you've done this, you ask for forgiveness. Doctor, can you be my priest? You say you're mistaken, but look what you've taken. You laugh as you lie through your teeth. And I feel like that resembles a lot to do with suicide and addiction, because sometimes the happiest people are the saddest, and the people that say that they're okay are the biggest users. And I think it's what we have to do is really learn how to, I think, balance out the emotions inside, just like with what you do with all the horrific things that you've had to experience in your life. You could be on a side of the world where you're like, fuck everybody. Sure. The world's a piece of shit.
That's easy.
I'm gonna ruin everybody else's life because I'm in pain. But instead, you decide to be elegant and beautiful and graceful and use that as a strength and wisdom to not only provide for your daughters, who are the most important thing to you, and you still recognize the job that you have to serve, but using the legacy of your mom and all the things that you've had to do, that in itself is, I think, in my mind, the key to overcoming any type of addiction or any type of bad behavior is being in control of emotion. And when we can think wisely, we're not always going to be able to justify the things that happen to us. But Jim Rohn, one of my favorite motivational speakers, who's kind of like my end game where I want to be when this is all said and done, he says, in life, it's not what happens to you that's important. It's who you become because of it.
Yeah.
And when you stand here like yourself, strong, confident, with the wisdom and value to protect and serve others, how could you go wrong?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I hadn't heard that quote, but I tell people all the time, you can't help where you've come from, but you can help with what you do with it. Right. Yeah. So like, I did come from a rough childhood, and I could have easily ended up in the same situation of what I watched growing up.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to put the work in for you.
Could have been people pleaser. You could have married, could stay with your alcoholic husband,
Sure.
possibly, get abused, or you started your own clothing brand. You're out here doing your thing with your family. You have a smile on your face. Where do that's the thing. Where do we want to be in life? There's so many ways to live this life.
Yeah.
And life is short.
So short.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, is there any, all this combined, last time, is there any advice to women out there that may be suffering? What would you say to them?
Don't suffer alone. And find somebody to talk to. And that was actually one of the biggest things that my therapist told me too, is find somebody that you can confide in to share this with. And that I've been on a journey with that, and not to lead into something else, but
feel free to we can talk more.
Finding people of merit, not just the shallow, how's the weather?
Yes.
How's your day going? It's fine. People will be there for you. I'm somebody, if you tell me that your day is not good, I want to know why. And I might not be able to fix it, but I don't have to, just to be able to listen and to validate somebody. There are people there that are willing to do that. So don't suffer in silence or suffer alone. Find somebody to talk to that's been through it, or that you can trust, and talk to them. At least share your feelings. Because it is real. You are validated. What you felt is true. And you don't have to live with that alone. Does that make sense?
No, it makes 100% sense. And, I think the biggest thing and what you said too is you don't have to be alone. You can find somebody, a loved one, somebody that you trust. And I totally agree with you on the merit. Just because somebody has a big following or they look like they fit the bill, do your research. I meet a lot of people who I think that they're really about it. And then and then I realize what they are. And I'm like, that's not even what you project. Why would we follow it? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I think morals, a compass, a heart of gold, those are the things that we need to find within people, because those are the things that are invaluable, that are priceless. And when it comes to emotion and experience, you can't pay for that. You have to experience
Absolutely,
it. So I just think that's great. You should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you
and
so
stand
much.
tall, because one, you've fought so many battles, but two, you have the grace to carry on. And I think that's the biggest thing is you don't internalize it. Maybe you did in one period with anger,
Sure.
but at least not today.
Mm-hmm. You can't. Actually, this is a really good piece of advice.
Talk as much as you want. I don't want to bore you to death. This is amazing.
No,
this is more than anybody ever talks to me on the road.
Oh, well, good.
We have to do in virtual to get 2 hours out of people.
My daughter's probably like, what'd you get back? My old leader, when I worked for corporate America, she was amazing. She was just incredible. She was somebody who really cared about the people that she was leading. She wasn't just a boss. And she told me one time, I went for a promotion and I didn't get it. And I was really upset. And she said, I know you're upset. And I want you to feel that. You need to feel those emotions. But do not unpack your suitcase, because you're not going to live there. You're going to move on. You're going to feel it, and you're going to get through it, and you're going to move on. And I use that a lot in all my life. Feel it, but don't unpack it. You're not going, yes, unpack your feelings, but you're not living here. You're moving on. And so any situation I've been in life, feel it, feel my feelings, go through that, and then I have to move on in life. I can't stay stuck in that. That's been the best advice I've had.
Well, I think it's true that, we should never mentally unpack ourselves. Everything is subjecting to adaptation and movement. And in Shinedown, and I live my life off of lyrics. Do you know Shinedown?
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know the song Call Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so he said, finally put it all together, realized nothing that really lasts forever. Had to make a choice that was not mine, had to say goodbye for the last time.
Yeah.
He said, I lived my whole life in a suitcase, never really stayed in one place. I live my life like a gypsy, but maybe that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And he said, I left my spare key on the table, never really thought I'd be able. I lost my whole life in a best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's so much value with that, because when you're ready to change, just like Jim Rohn, another quote by him is, things will change when you change.
Yeah.
When you change, things change.
Yeah.
When you get better, things get better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the times, and that's why with our philosophy with Madman Plant, is how can you grow a great garden if you can't grow a great human? The skills, the resources, the money, the education, the networking, the community to learn how to grow this plant.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to find the same resources and apply them to yourselves. And what I ultimately equate that to with people is, people love the life of instant gratification. They like what they can see is working now.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with life, like you with dealing with trauma, is unlike a plant where it can veg and flower in 63 days or 100 days, and now you have your weed. The healing process, the mental discipline, the development, that could take years.
Yeah.
You're not going to see it like a plant would in
No.
a single season or cycle.
It's not linear either. So one day you're here and then the next day you're back here, and that's not failure.
No.
It's just part of the journey.
Yeah. People have this weird concept that failure goes uphill just like this. Failure, like you said, is up, down, way
Right.
down, up a little bit, down a little bit, skyrocketing to the top, all the way down,
Right.
flatlining for a little bit, then dropping,
Yeah.
dropping. You know, but here's the thing, just like with anything, most people who are great not because they're truly the best at what they did.
Mm-hmm.
They're the most consistent and persistent with what they do.
Yeah.
And that's why in business and in life and in opportunity, you don't need a record label nowadays to become a superstar musician.
Yeah.
You need yourself and a guitar, an instrument, and you need the heart and the love that you have. And I think when you get empowered by that through situation, through experience, through, memorialization of like a person or a thing, it drives that into a point where if you were just doing it for a single reason, like I told you, like the whole reason I do my podcast is I'm trying to change the way I feel when I die the next time, because I almost took myself out. I almost injected myself with gasoline when I was younger, which I found out that would have been extremely painful. And I'm very glad I didn't do that, because if I had survived just like your mom, who knows what kind of health complications I would have had moving forward, And then two, with the car accident, just like with you with the motorcycle accident, I want to feel complete. Sometimes I even feel dead inside. Like I'm not living my true potential. I'm not seeking life. I'm just existing. And I don't want to exist. I want to feel. I want to experience, because to me, I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow. Okay, I will be here tomorrow, Lacey. Don't get freaked out, okay? Because I know you watch the podcast. I'm coming home. But what I'm saying is, we all could be gone tomorrow.
Sure.
And the only thing that's left is our legacy, our impact, and how we try to change the world. And whether it's just one person you changed your entire life, or you're some famous person that can reach the hearts of millions of people, it doesn't matter. It's about the energy and the life that we created while living. Life is boring. We create the experience, the excitement that we feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% on board with that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you want to keep going, or you want to call it?
I would love to. I'd love to come back and talk to you more.
So what we'll do is we'll call it now.
Okay.
We're going to get you on the virtual podcast so that you can do it from Kentucky.
Yep.
And we'll go more into this. I'll have you fill out more questions, because your story is just amazing.
Well,
and
thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell it. Out of all my podcasts today, there's two podcasts that I've really felt like that were most valuable. Yours is the longest now at an hour and 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
I tricked her. I told her it was only 10 minutes.
You said 10 minutes. Yeah.
Did it feel like an hour?
It did not. No, I thought maybe like
say.
20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, when we do the 2-hour podcast, you're gonna think it's 45 minutes. But no, it's just really cool, because I truly value what I do.
Yeah.
And just like you, I know I have purpose.
Yeah.
And being able to be here with people serves my purpose, because like you, I want more now.
Yeah.
The world's put me on edge. I'm coming for all that it has to offer.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell people where they can find you and how we can support your great clothing line.
Thank you. So I've got 2 Instagrams.
Perfect.
I mostly do Instagram. Tattooedinky. So Tattooedinky is my personal. I do some photo shoots too, tattoo modeling, that type of thing. And then Dark Horse Collective is my other Instagram. That's my business name, and so you can find all the rest of my work on there.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
being on, guys. We have more podcasts coming your way here at the Tattoo Convention. We'll see you soon.